Hello, and welcome to episode 47 of the Carry On with Carrie podcast. Today, I am thrilled for you to meet Tara Boothby, registered psychologist, MA in counseling psychology, BA in theology. She's also a certified emotionally focused therapist and supervisor, working with Circle of Security Fidelity coach in training. Tara has worked at Sojourn Wellness Group as a psychologist, a supervisor, and a case manager for over 15 years. She's a dedicated psychologist, and she also enjoys teaching. She has instructed courses at Grant MacEwan University and the University of Alberta. Tara is also the author of the groundbreaking book, Love and Love's Energy. As a psychologist, she expands on the traditional views of love and attachment theory. She proposes a revolutionary view, how self-love and love energy are both essential to our human evolutionary survival, and how both occur within greater mass of love's energy. This book offers valuable insights into attachment theory, the science and theory of human connection, and with self and others, and leads the reader to further consider supernatural love, or love's energy. So, without further ado, now it's time to talk. Hello, and welcome to episode 47 of the Carry On with Carrie podcast. Today, I am really happy to introduce Tara Boothby. She is a registered psychologist and author. She works at Sojourn Psychology for the last 15 years, and your book is titled Love and Love's Energy. How are you?
I'm really great. I'm so happy to be here, actually, Carrie. I was telling you just before we got on, as much of the speaking and engagements that I've done, I've never done a podcast.
I know.
It's my first.
This is awesome.
It is awesome. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So can you tell us, I've been kind of following you and watching for a while, and it's so exciting, all the things that you have going on. Can you tell us a little bit about what got you into, you've got your book, and psychology itself?
Well, so those are two excellent questions. I guess really with psychology, that's where I start. Is in high school, I thought, what am I going to do? I really love poetry. It's always been my thing. And within that, I like looking at theological writers. So the old theology writers are very poetic, actually. Mm-hmm. No matter what you believe, you look at even Plato and Socrates and beyond that. It's this special genre. So I was really passionate about those things. And I decided to go into a Bible school because my friends were.
Okay.
So, there wasn't a lot of thought. I was like, everybody's going to this school, I might as well go too. I didn't know what to study, and the degree theology sounded good. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what it was. So I started studying theology. I figured out it was a study of God. I was okay with that. I thought I was going to be a camp director.
Oh, okay.
And run Bible camps is what I thought I was going to do. Mm-hmm. But I've never really been good at converting people. And I don't really, now I know, I don't really believe in that methodology. Mm-hmm. of how people do those things. And at camp, I realized that kids needed more than a week. So I met some kids with significant mental health stuff, OCD, cutting, intense suicidal thoughts. And it was like, these kids need more. And then I graduated with my degree and thought, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. But my dad was wise, because he had this young adult woman who didn't get married, which is something that you sort of think you're going to do at Bible school. Mm-hmm. Women should get married.
Right.
That's the old patriarchal view. I didn't. So he started researching and thinking, what do I do with this kid? I should probably look into master's. Mm-hmm. She's interested in psychology. And he found Trinity Western. I went out there. It's a great degree.
Right. Where is that?
It's in Langley, right across from Fort Langley. It's a good little school. It is a Christian-based school as well. But the master's that I did, it was research-based, it was application-based, and theory-based. So it was a really good degree. Mm-hmm. Then I came back here, got registered as a psychologist, took over Sojourn from my dear friend because he got a job in Calgary. And I've been here, honestly, learning from my mistakes as how to run a company since I was 26 years old. I've been running Sojourn.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And all sorts of crazy things that has happened, like teaching at Grant McEwen and the U of A. And like, I've just had this amazing career of happenstances.
Yeah. And how it all kind of flows into the next thing, and
Yes.
Right? Awakens a different side of you, which gives you more confidence. And
Yeah.
so it kind of brings you now to your book.
Yes. Yeah. So I think too that I can look quite impulsive. I think people sort of view me as, okay, she just did that. Like, why did you even think about it? Or do you just keep doing something and then you're running and it actually turns out? I think sometimes things don't turn out, but lots of things do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of anxiety and a very, very busy brain. When I started I'll get to the book, but
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
going where my brain is going.
Absolutely.
And when I started our YouTube, actually, it was March 2020. And I had been thinking about doing something with YouTube for a really long time. I had all of my shitty equipment. My equipment's not great, but I was ready. And then when the pandemic happened, again, it was like what we call this happenstance. It was an existential moment where I had prepared for something I didn't know was going to happen. And when it happened, I was ready for it.
Right.
So I just started vlogging. I was talking about it with my husband a couple weeks ago, and looking back, they're so terrible in the beginning.
That's how I feel about my podcast. I think, oh geez, if people are trying to follow me, they're like, ooh, what is this podcast?
But
that's okay.
I was watching, yeah, it is. And I was watching I like this one YouTube, and they were this odd couple, and they were teaching some health and diet stuff that they really didn't have the right to teach, but I liked them. And at one point he said, if you're going to start a YouTube or a podcast or anything, know that when you look back at the beginning, you're going to say, wow, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I failed forward. I started the YouTube vlog. I appreciate learning curves like that. And so that was another big thing of like, okay, prepare, think about it, go forward. I'll say I've always been a writer. I identify more as a poet.
Okay.
Poetry is more my genre. There will be poetry books coming out. I have one ready. It's just, again, the anxiety and the fear of actually like putting
it out there. Yes, it's a vulnerable
thing,
right?
And poetry is not, it's not popular.
Right. Well, I mean, depending on which circle you're in.
In my circle,
yes.
it's cool, but it's really, again, it feels vulnerable in a different way. And I've just always been a writer. When I was doing my undergrad, our psychology prof said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I just want to write. And I remember there's lots of people who would have said, I just. He said, for the people who said, you probably really want to do it. I have no idea why he said that. I have no theory as to why he thought that made sense. But that stuck with me. And I've always written. And I love attachment. I've fallen headlong into attachment. Is a big part of correcting and continuing to correct the flaws in my spiritual identity.
Okay.
I think that in the theories of attachment, I have discovered more truths of broken humanity, and then questioned or have a better definition of love and nonviolence.
Yes.
So nonviolent social justice is a huge piece. I think since 2021, I've really been awakened to how to do nonviolent protest and how to just like be in the same heart of love as everybody else. There's no violence.
Right.
Yeah.
Because everything is love.
Love is always inclusive, or it is not love.
I heard you say that on a different interview. Yeah. And I just thought, that was like an aha moment. It's true.
It is true. And so many of us don't know it.
So how do you think, okay, I'm so interested in the attachment and where does it stem from as far as healthy or not? Is it from childhood?
So attachment is from an evolutionary point of view, we have nature and nurture. Okay. And so many of the factual, scientific, empirical views of ourselves as our biological being. but we're wellness-based individuals. We're social, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical, and occupational. So that was my original thesis, was the wellness wheel. I did that in 2024, 2025. And I've loved wellness because it was a way for me to wrap psychology around what's always been important to me is spirituality. And in our wellness, then, it alludes to we're not just biological beings. And when we look at attachment, it proves more and more, the theory proves we're hardwired for relationship.
Mm-hmm.
A baby is born. I think babies think they're dying. I think it's our first existential crisis. You're in this beautiful little world, and then you're contracted out of it.
Right. It's trauma.
It's totally trauma. And there's really cool things we do with in utero and early infancy trauma work with EMDR.
Okay. Yes, I've done that myself.
Oh,
okay.
EMDR, the early trauma protocol, it's
Mhm.
fascinating. It's
Right.
so existential, and it just really helps people understand their attachment. But going back to, so attachment is really I think it's from in utero, just because of the work I've done with EMDR. And right or wrong, when you do EMDR, people do have memories of being in the uterus, whether it's because of stories they've heard. I've heard, I had a colleague who did it on her child, and this child remembered their whole birth story, which
Really?
according to her, they'd never heard.
Huh.
But we're relational beings, and our brain is alert. Why couldn't we remember those things?
Yeah.
And so right from the
It's
beginning,
there somewhere.
yeah,
Mhm.
right from the beginning, and real more like better theorists than me, because I identify as a theorist now.
Okay.
Better theorists than me know that a child is born, and they're alert to mom and dad,
Mhm.
whomever is their primary caregiver, which traditionally is the birth mother, but there's all sorts of lovely caregivers. When I see you as my number one, baby says, what do I do to make sure you love me, that you like me?
Okay.
Because if you go away, I die.
Right.
So right away, baby's starting to learn, do I cry? Do I not cry? And as baby gets, more alert and more aware, baby's capacity expands.
Mhm.
Do I smile? Do I laugh? Do I crawl farther away? Do I not? Do I play quietly? Do I seek mommy out or whomever? Do I cuddle into you? Do I go to bed well?
Mhm.
All of these things. And so in the circle of security, we might call it like miscuing or cueing, or clues is something we talk about as well. So a child often hides their needs.
Okay.
And in my book, I call it defaulting. So we put this persona out there. There's different ways people talk about it.
Mhm.
I create a character, I create this image and these behaviors to get what I need, or
Right.
what I think I need.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is your perception
Yeah.
of what is needed. So, and okay, and that, oh wow. So that explains so much about so many things too, right?
Yeah.
As far as now, I just want to know your opinion then on the evolution of psychology with parenting
Yes.
through, I'm just going to go back to say Dr. Spock.
Yeah.
And, all the different experiments that have happened over the years as to how you should raise your child, and now all of the things that are coming up now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's evolved in a healthy way, or have we gone from one extreme to the other?
Beautiful question. We do tend to we overcorrect.
Mm-hmm.
There's this pendulum, and in the past, when I was first educated on the societal pendulum, we talk about it postmodern and modern, but we kind of are in this weird space where I keep thinking this postmodern pendulum is going to swing back into some more traditional rule-based thinking, more structured, but we just keep swinging further and further out. So I don't know current theories or what people might be saying on why we're not coming back into some of this like rule-based behavior. But over categorizing things is hell. So that's one thing that I'll say. And I believe that. And I guess there's so many people who are wiser than me. We mentioned William Paul Young, who wrote The Shack, and he writes a letter to the author in here. And I've heard him speak about the the true language, Hebrew, Greek, and that actually one of the ways that they notice hell, what we would call hell, is over categorizing. So I think that when psychology is so young, it's such a young science. And in the beginning, we had people like Spock, or Bowlby is the father of attachment. And we had all of these positive intention-based people that they're just trying to understand the psyche. Even Freud, like he was trying to make sense of these kids. Erickson's developmental stages. There's lots of really, really good information in those theories. But again, in parenting, we want to look at a social justice point of view, is what I will say. If we're going to make a broader term, what is nonviolence as a parent?
Right.
And I think the word violence is something that I try to plug in more into like relational dynamics. So if I am disciplining my child and I am over connected with the word punishing,
right,
or omitting, withdrawing love, those sorts of things really risk or potentially are always violent. Whereas, love is, again, always inclusive, or it is not love. It's harder to figure out how to do attachment-based parenting. There isn't a really great rule book.
Right.
A lot of it is about co-regulation and self-regulation. The more regulated I am as mommy, the better my child can sense into my central nervous system, the better they can regulate, and the better it's going to go with whatever we're doing. Bedtime.
Right.
Eating. Oh my word. If I could just be regulated when it's time to feed my child, I get so dysregulated at feeding. My kids are 6 and 7. They're fussy. And so I can feel the anxiety get stuck inside of me.
Right.
And then it goes bad.
Yes. Because the energy's out there. Yeah.
The energy's out there, and they're just, again, they're watching, and they're trying to regulate off of us. It's a very powerful dynamic.
And to not get caught up in also the guilt of learning how to because be a parent. And I look now, all my kids are grown up now, and I think, geez, what did I do to them? But you look at it, life, like you said, there's no rule book really. No. It's a generational thing. Do you believe that yourself?
I think we're getting better and better. I think that, so we really, from an attachment point of view, my goal with parents is that I see their positive intention and that I buy into their good intention towards their child. I believe in them so much that they buy into me. Right. And then we can help them to better communicate. This is my real heart of hearts for my child, rather than when, as parents, we do things, we'll call it like a parental block in the emotionally focused family point of view, which might be, in the old view, we'd say authoritarian. So I get so strict because all I want is for you to do good in life, or permissive. I'm just always giving in because I never want you to feel bad.
Right.
I like to be liked by my kids. And so I struggle with that as well, where it's, I don't know, we just love these little guys so much. They're so cute.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, you're coming from a place of love, even whether you're doing it from the authoritarian. I can't even say that word.
Authoritarian.
Thank you. Authoritarian point of view, or from the overcompensation.
Yes.
And do you find now with, especially with a lot of relationships, parents separating, and that dynamic, I believe, becomes even stronger?
Yeah.
Or can it? Yeah.
Divorce is almost always trauma for kids. And I don't, again, parental guilt is just so common. And there's a place where divorce has to happen, and there's a place where people need to run away from relationships. And there's a place where we got to put our own oxygen mask on, because if I stay in the toxic, I am toxic.
Right.
And that's my experience. I think of toxic relationships I've had where my behavior becomes toxic. It's not about blaming somebody else. It's just like we're in this toxic soup.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that energy, the co-regulation, the corrective epiphany is what we call it in emotionally focused therapy, is we want lots of corrective epiphanies. I want to sit with you and feel the musicy, lovey, good stuff together, because the more we have that, the more co-regulated we are, the more self-regulated I am, and hopefully you are too. If the music is shit, it's really hard to like who we are in that relationship. And as a parent, that's important to notice. And we're, whether we give our kids big T trauma or little T trauma, they're going to get a little bit of it.
Right.
They're going to need therapy.
That's life.
My kids are going to need therapy.
Yes.
Because I'm not a perfect mom and my husband's not a perfect dad.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, that brings it all down to love and self-love. And I love the fact that you brought up, okay, so to love our children, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And whether you're a man or a woman or whoever it is that's taking care of a child, right? A caregiver. What are some of the things that my mom always said? I say this on a lot of episodes. You have to love yourself first.
Yes.
Okay, well, how do you do that?
I think, it's funny. I always say it's funny, but I find it so powerful when I have a moment when something really interesting strikes me. And as much as I know I think about love differently, what my colleague Tanya Budwani said to me, you think about love differently. And I was like, oh, actually, yeah, it became clear when somebody said it to me out loud. Self-love is so misunderstood. It's not just this superficial Valentine's Day thing, that it's really about this depth of knowing that we are whole people and we are wholly loved. Like, I am completely loved. I'm completely included in this grander mass of love that is beyond you and I. Like, you're just as included as I am. I know my own record of wrong. And so part of self-love is this like extending inclusive love towards me. I know all the shitty things I've done. I know why people don't like me or why somebody would want to campaign and say bad things about me. I get it. I've made mistakes. I like to audit myself, so I know what I've done, and I contend with myself.
Right.
So it goes. Self-love extends into like rupture and repair, forgiveness, potential for reconciliation. Like, it's really a spiritual thing. But we start where we start. And I think one of the best tips I can give for self-love is, if you're never silent, if you never find a pause for some sort of meditative or contemplative space, I don't think a person's ever going to really find it.
Right.
So it sounds really strong. And I'm like, do I believe that? But I think we need to get really quiet with ourselves if we're going to love ourselves. And then it's going to look unique.
Right. Everybody's different.
Different. I will say,
there's no special recipe.
There's no special recipe. You think back into, I don't know if you're going to Sarah McLachlan, but she's here tonight.
Is she?
I'm
geez, I wish.
I know.
I didn't even know.
I know. So
that's good.
It's beautiful. And I like, for all of us ladies, as Canadian ladies, Sarah is just like a part of young adult or adolescence. I remember she was one of my first CDs. So I was reminiscing this morning, listening to some Sarah McLachlan and thinking again, I think of this so many times in the 90s when I got my CD player and I started buying CDs, and a hobby that people had was listening to music.
Yes.
So I think of what are my hobbies. The other day, I'm like, one of my hobbies is I listen to music. I don't hear people saying that anymore.
Not anymore, no.
But we used to lay on the bed. I would lay on my bed and I would listen to an album. But that is an example of contemplation.
Right.
We're in a space of meditation when we actually get still. We didn't have cell phones. Nobody's on the reels. Nobody's checking Instagram. You'd lay on your bed. Maybe you'd light a candle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's those old things of getting still and silent. And that is really, there is something about that space that helps us better understand love.
Wow, you know what? You just that was my hobby.
Yeah.
I would sit in my room, and yes, all those things that you just said. Mine was a cassette player, and I would sit and listen, and I would try to figure out what the words were, and I'd write them down, and like it was a whole,
Who did you listen to?
I loved Corey Hart.
Did you?
I loved everything. My dad, like Barbara Streisand, we listened to, but we also I listened to Madonna singing Evita. I was in choirs. So music was a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
But as you get busy and you have kids and you have,
yes,
like I like every kind of music, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, almost every kind of music.
Almost.
Yes.
I hear you. I get it.
Yes. So, and the power of music.
Yeah. And I love that. And it's strange, I look at friends who are even in choirs and things like, and I think, how do you get into that and how do you make time for it? But we make time for nothing. Mm-hmm. There's a book called The Gift of Nothing. Okay. And it's kind of this Buddhist state of being, no thing. That there's this no thing, nothing, no thingness of how do I carve out space of contemplation. I love Thomas Merton. I just discovered him this year. I wasn't meant to find him when I was in my 20s because I would have become a nun. And I guess I wasn't supposed to. And monks just seem so much cooler than nuns. But I think of the monastic space, and do we create monastic space in our lives? Mm-hmm. And so self-love, if I don't create some monastic space, Thomas Merton, I think he knew, he is like a alive and vibrant kind of guy. Very famous book, The 7-Story Mountain. And he's written over 60 books.
Okay.
So he's fabulous. And I just think, what, like he wasn't lying about himself. He had conflict. He didn't like some of the other monks. They didn't like him. All of these cheeky little things. He was a person, a whole person. But then he would create space for no thing. And in that, he was so giving, writing letters to all these people, writing books and all of these things. Mm-hmm. That's that no thing space. Having a hobby like listening to music. If I don't have a hobby that gets me slow, mm-hmm. I think that's something we need.
Yes. Yeah. Because we're just going all the time.
We're going all the time.
Especially if you have a mind that.
Yeah. Busy mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Busy brain. Busy brain is what the biofeedback call it. So busy brain. And people will say to me, how do you do everything you do? Like, I don't know. I don't know how not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just how you're wired.
Yeah. I get 8 hours of sleep every night.
Right. Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah. So I sleep and it's just a busy brain. Mm-hmm. I will self-medicate in ways that can pull me away. Distraction pulls us away. Mm-hmm. Watching TV or other things that we do to waste our time. There's many good distractions.
Yes. Yeah.
Even like alcohol is a lovely thing to have a glass of wine, but that also just, it's a central nervous system depressant. So anything that numbs us out internally, how does that hinder my relationship with self? And then with parenting as well. Mm-hmm. Right. If I mute my central nervous system, my kids are trying to co-regulate off. So it's all this like...
And that's where detachments come from.
Yes.
So, okay, I am very interested because you did talk about disassociating and numbing yourself and all of those things. I guess is a form of self-care in a way, or it could start off that way. But things like numbing yourself with wine and alcohol. I know I'm 2.5 years sober myself, and learning about the codependency that comes with that. And so if you're in Al-Anon or AA, they talk a lot about that. Can you give any of your perspective on, on that side to codependency?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it feels like a faux pas, but that's some of the old view. Mm-hmm. In the past, we would view people talking about recovery as a defect of character or disease, or, they're an alcoholic. Whereas now there's a different view. So many of the young people don't drink at all.
Yeah.
They have never, or they just really have, maybe they've watched us. Yeah. They've learned from us. I don't know. Yeah. But there's still a great book, The Naked Mind by Annie Grace. I hope I'm saying that right. But The Naked Mind, Annie, I forget her last name. I think it's Grace. And we're marketed. It's such a marketing ploy, especially wine and women. And there's all these things about drinking alcohol and women and their wine, all the reels, all these things. So it's like top of mind. Go to a restaurant and it's like, oh, if I don't have a drink in my hand, I'm not a part of the tribe. So there's all these ways that we're manipulated to think we need things.
Yes.
We need fast food. We need Tim Hortons. We need Starbucks. I had Starbucks this morning. We need wine. There's a liquor store in every corner. Now there's a marijuana store in every corner. So all of these things, it's really propaganda to influence us. And they're drugs. So in The Naked Mind, she talks about how when we bring substances into our body that alter our chemical brain, it's a slippery slope, right? So alcohol in particular, no matter what, if it's 90-year-old lady who has a little whiskey on the weekend, she's on a slope. It's just the trajectory.
Right.
And when we realize that alcohol is poison, they're all poison and they're always addictive, but more so, they are barriers to relationship. So why would I want to numb out my central nervous system when I'm chilling with my kids?
Right.
Or when I'm out with my honey, or, even when we're eating really great food, the belief is that wine elevates, but it actually desensitizes our sense, like our scent and our taste is hindered by wine.
Okay.
So there's all these things. I believe the power of suggestion. And then again, just purely, so I was an addictions counselor prior to coming to Alberta, and I love talking about addictions and recovery. It is a barrier to relationship. From the attachment school of thought, the emotionally focused model, we would call it a competing attachment.
Okay.
And I will often describe it as a mistress. So it feels that way when we're really honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
I feel whatever I'm feeling, good or bad, and I want my honey. But if I think I'm going to get wine and then go to my honey, I'm actually going to wine.
Right.
Or I'll just have a couple glasses of wine and watch a movie with the kids. I will have a couple of glasses of wine. Where's my first stop? Where's my first relational checkpoint? And we create this, fascination with things like coffee, wine, food, gambling. It's easy. Gambling's always tricky for me. Social media. What am I putting in first?
Yeah. And it's huge right now. And we are inundated, like you said, every street corner. What's the first thing a lot of people do when they wake up? They grab their phone.
Yes.
And they check out what's happening.
Yeah.
And the detachment from your family and your kids when you're in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's true. And I'm just as guilty. I know the things that are my vices, right? Yeah. So, really, maintenance management, it's not true pure harm reduction, but it's like, okay, I know this is more of a problem. I'm very aware of my relationship with alcohol. I'm not completely sober. My goal is to be completely sober because it's not good. But I'm more aware of that, and I'm working. My relationship with stopping a bad thing is going to be different than Carrie's, different than my husband's, different than other people.
That's right.
But I'm working on my relationship, my attachment, my surrogate attachment. And then also I think with social media, it's hard when it's your job. Part of my job is social media. I think it was the night before, we were watching a movie with our kids, and my daughter was like, it's not fair. You're on your phone. You're not watching with me.
Yeah.
But again, if I'm getting my relational hit from my phone, I'm not present with my child.
That's right.
Even though I think she's watching a movie, she's actually being with mommy.
Yeah. They really do watch you.
Yeah.
They're being guided by you. They want to learn, and they want to feel you, and just like you want them to feel you too.
Yeah.
Right? Do you find?
Definitely. Well, it's relationships are reciprocal.
Yeah.
And it's different with marriage or companionship, with adult relationships. I think it's like we're volleying back and forth. We have hands on the relationship. And sometimes I'm carrying it, sometimes Carrie is, sometimes I'm carrying it more, sometimes my husband is. Maybe we notice the pressure or the proximity depending on intimacy changes. But with children, and I haven't had parents to take care of yet, so I don't know that difference. But I think that with parents, the tense of the relationship is always on an angle. And as they grow, it's like there's more of an acute angle when they're young, and as they grow, it kind of shifts up. But we're still mommy, we're still daddy, we're still grandma, we're still auntie, we're still a caregiver to the child. And I think that's part of what's really confusing for sandwich people when they're taking care of kids and their parents. But you look at mom or dad, lots of times people say, my dad died. He's invincible. How could he die? Even dads that aren't great, people will say, like, I just never thought he'd ever die.
Yeah.
And you think of your mother, she sustained life. That's like, I was alive because I was a part of your body. You share a body with your biological mother. So that really, again, just knowing that, you think of all of the attachment dynamics for a human.
Right. Yes. And all the evolutions, like I was saying, I just turned 50 this year. My parents they listen to my podcast, so they'll hear this, but they're my biggest fans. But watching them age and then watching my kids leave the house, like it's in that transitional time, and learning how to cope with that. It's now time for me to put on my own oxygen mask because I haven't done that for so long.
Well, and it changes. That's where Erikson's developmental stages, when we're talking about the older, more structured views of psychology, it still rings true. We keep changing and growing and having life experiences, the existential views of we're going to keep having existential crises. Facing 50, my husband's facing 50. He turns 50 this year. And so it's like, wow, this is a big milestone. My sister is not quite there, but she's already talking about 50. And
I didn't think it would affect me as much as it did, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning a ton.
Well, and it's okay. And then I think that's part of it, is whether we notice a vice or we're like, this is a flaw about me, or a default, actually. Like with the danger with something like alcohol is what it hides our need.
Right.
So it becomes what I put out on the top of the surface. I'll go out with the girls and we'll have wine. And then I'm just being Tara having wine. I don't really go out with girls, but imagine if I did.
Yes.
Then I'm just having wine with the girls rather than saying, hey, can you really be with me in this place where I need to talk to somebody?
Right. Yeah, because you're not you.
No, I'm acting then.
Yeah. Which do you find, like you said, imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Can you give a little bit of thought? Does that also kind of relate to attachments? And I think it kind of would.
So then when I think of, attachments, I think I want to notice it in two ways. So there's the attachment relationship, which I call love energy. So there's this energy flow, and then there's actually two, like, attachments to things and behaviors. So we could categorize them as separate. And that this is where, when we start talking about relationships and people, it is crazy making. And that's, again, why I wrote the book, is if you fall into the vortex of attachment theory, you're going to feel like you're going nuts. Right. It's really complicated. And for me, I try to simplify it. There's the ways that my attachments manifest. So I become more attached to these behaviors or presenting this image to these things in my life. I'm the girl who picks up a Tim Hortons in the morning, and I dress this way, and I inject my lips, or I do the things, and I'm all these things. I don't inject my lips. If you do, that's fine. That's your choice, right? Yeah. But there's these things of, like, this is the image that I'm creating this image so that I can get the attachment energy that I believe I need.
Okay.
So if I look this way, then people won't necessarily know that I'm flawed. I don't have to go there with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's there. I know my own record of wrong. Everybody else knows theirs. But when we hide behind those image pieces, it's easier to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just think, well, I just hide this away.
Right.
But okay, so I don't think I answered your question. What was your...
Just about the relation between attachment and what was it? I don't know, but it was
We'll get
good.
back to it.
Yes.
It was good. But
imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
And
there you go.
Attachment.
Well,
yes.
that is, I mean, that is...
That you basically did answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are, like, for myself, I have, and I hate going back to myself all the time, but it's just, that's who I know.
Well, I think that it's helpful to
Yeah.
be human people, and to be, you're not just somebody who's doing a great job of a podcast. It's like, oh, there's a podcast woman. You're Carrie.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And my publisher will say, there's something really important and powerful when somebody who appears to be an expert, like a psychologist, can just be a real person.
Mm-hmm.
So we're human, and we can talk about our own humanity. Imposter syndrome, we all have it. We're all imposters. When we just live in that false place, we're all miscuing. We're all hiding our need by being in this contrived state of presence, until we get slow and contemplative. Okay. And we create a hobby like listening to music or listening to nothing. Mm-hmm. And we, in that space, we have to look at, I'm a person, I'm a whole person. And part of my wholeness is my flawedness, how I've hurt other people, how I've hurt myself, lies I believed about the world, lies I have manifested or taught other people. Mm-hmm. So it's really in that space. It's like, it's not always a fun place to fall into.
No, you have to, but you have to sit in it sometimes.
Yeah, we have to sit in it, not as long as we fear we will.
Right.
Because it's just a part of who we are. I know my flaws. In the book, I notice at my heart of hearts, my fear is that I am heartless. And that's a pain place. But what's beautiful is the more I've talked about it, the more it's just been a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. I've known it for a long time. And
can you explain that a little bit? What do you mean by heartless?
Well, just that, jaded, really, I think that what I hear from clients more and more, and I guess I think it's just, I hear it in a better way, is at our core fear place, at our most unthinkable flawed spot. Mm-hmm. We just believe the worst about us. If people really knew this.
Okay.
And it feels more profoundly spiritual than, if people really knew this, they wouldn't like me. If this is exposed to the world, I am utterly alone.
Oh, wow.
So that complete isolation, the spiritual dilemma, either I am included in the same heart of love as everybody else, mm-hmm. or I am floating off in the universe. There's no stars near me. I'm all utterly alone. So either I am heartless.
Yeah.
I'm subhuman or non-human. So I'm getting dark and twisty and
no,
philosophical. Or I am included in the same heart of love as everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You just gave me, that was like a huge, I'm going to quote Oprah, aha moment. It seriously was.
I love Oprah. I'm fine with Oprah showing up in conversations. Okay. Yes. She's done a lot of good.
She has definitely done a lot of good. And wow, this is so, okay, we are here to talk about the book, and I know we are in our own ways, but is there anything that you really want to kind of focus on with your book that, like, what can people expect when they begin reading?
I hope that what people will expect is that it is an experience. Like, you are not alone in this book. I'm there with you. There's my stories are in this book. We at the end, I really notice it as like floating, and we're floating in this giant mass of love. And sometimes you're floating by yourself. Right. Always. Sometimes you're floating by yourself. Sometimes I'm floating by myself. And sometimes, like right now, we're floating close by. We're holding hands, mm-hmm. and we're together. We're co-regulating and we're being present. But when I liken it to floating, it's non-pathologizing and it's non-theorizing. It's an image, and it's a visceral experience if we allow ourselves. So if somebody actually reads this book and they're like, wow, I get that did something for me, I hope that they can put it in their mind's eye and create somewhat of a flashbulb connection with a good book. I think it's a good little book. I
love the cover too.
Yeah.
It's with the two birds entangled with the yarn and the heart in the middle, and it's a beautiful.
Well, actually, my dear friend, you should get him on your podcast. He's a local artist, Jared Robinson. He's a fabulous guy, and we've known each other since we were 19. I was 19. And we were just like weird, dorky little kids, and we were so odd. But all of our little weird group, we just like had this friendship. We were too weird for everybody to couple up or do anything like that. We were just a bunch of nerdy kids.
Right.
Artists maybe, or whatever we were. And Jared and I have not always been in touch, but again, during lockdowns and pandemics, we were both facing this like existential crisis of all the things that we believed about spirituality. And it's like, there's got to be a bit more or a bit different. And that his friendship, William Paul Young, a bunch of the teachers that I learned from right now, I feel like that attachment is where I really found God.
Right.
So I've always had an admiration for God. I got a degree in God, but I don't think I really had an embodied experience of relationship, spiritual relationship, until I started to question, like, what if God is loving?
Right.
And I can't explain that. And I mean, it fits within psychology from a wellness perspective. I believe we're just whole people. And it's hard to navigate, like, who am I socially? I might like some parts and I might not, or emotionally, intellectually, physically, occupationally, all the things we do with our time. The spiritual piece of who we are can be a no-fly zone. People are afraid to offend people, but we're spiritual beings.
Yeah.
And we're all included in the same heart of love. Knowing that has changed my experience of being spiritual. I still get anxiety and fear talking about it.
Right.
Because it's sort of like, don't talk about it. You're going to offend somebody. But why do we have to offend people to be spiritual beings?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So say you're somebody, I find this fascinating. But okay, so for myself, again, I'm very, very empathetic. I feel everybody's emotions. At least that's my perception of it. I feel when I come in the room, if somebody's not happy, it just breaks my heart, and I want to make them better. And how do all of those things, because we are all connected in some way. I don't even know if that makes sense, but what would be some advice to somebody who does walk into a room and feel everything?
Okay, I think I have three things.
Okay.
So if from a spiritual point of view, we might say somebody has discernment.
Okay.
And that might be a way where we notice, okay, well, maybe you're just good at discerning. If you allow yourself to be. From a psychology point of view, we might say maybe you've really gifted at attunement.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that was another amazing episode of the Carry On with Carrie podcast. I want to thank Tara so much for being a part of this. Like I said at the beginning, this is just part one of our 2-part conversation. You're going to want to tune in next week and find out a lot more about Tara and her theories. She's fascinating to listen to. I could listen to her for hours. All right. And thanks so much. Please give Tara some support. Give her a follow on Instagram at Tara_Boothby, or you can find her book, Love and Love's Energy, on Amazon or Kindle. I will have all the links up in my episode. You can also look for her at Sojourn Psychology. Don't forget to listen next week. And if you've enjoyed this episode, send this episode to somebody that you think, we all know somebody that maybe needs to learn more about attachment and connection and all of those amazing things. and the significance it has on our mental health. Yeah, let's get healthy together. Please give me a follow and a share. You can find me on carryonwithcarrie_podcast on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook at Carry On With Carrie Podcast. You can also take a listen to me and give me a share and follow and all those good things. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. And let's just try to help one more person at a time.